All right. So if anyone, I know Josh is familiar with this, but if you've been following me for a while, or if you've been a member of my Career Accelerator or the community or whatever, you know I talk about writing all the time. And I'm sure people get tired of hearing it, but the reason I talk about writing so much is it's incredibly beneficial professionally as well as personally. There's a lot of catharsis that you can experience through writing by documenting how you're feeling, what you're thinking. I recommend morning journaling. This is something um, Tim Ferriss talks about all the time. Ryan Holiday talks about this. There's a lot of people who they do about 30 minutes of morning journaling before they open their email, before they touch their social media, before they look at the news, and before your brain gets polluted with all the frightening, irritating, and aggravating issues of the day. It allows you just to be kind of free form and creative and get thoughts out of your head. So I usually sit down with a cup of coffee and do it. So that's a good exercise just for capturing goals, capturing the way you're thinking about things, capturing ideas, and being able to come back and flip through the pages later and see patterns. You start to see patterns. I've been journaling for years now,
Mm.
and I'll flip back through my notebooks and I'll see patterns of things that I said, I really should try this. I really should try this. And it's like, okay, I mentioned that 7 times. Maybe I should do that. And then there'll be things that you get excited about. My ADHD brain gets excited about lots of new ideas and business ideas. I'm like, oh, I should do XYZ. And then I never talk about it again. And it's kind of an indicator for me. It's like if I mention something and I'm all excited about it, but it never pops into my brain ever again in a different form, then it's like, okay, maybe it wasn't that great of an idea. But if it keeps coming up, it's a bit of a hint. If something keeps coming up, maybe it's a direction you should take your career. Maybe it's a direction you should take your life. Maybe it's something that you've been trying to express and you've been repressing because maybe it's not part of your daily job and you've been putting it aside over and over again. So that's one reason. The other is just blogging, writing articles online. It gets you noticed. It is a noisy world, as you know. So if any of you are looking for jobs, if any of you are business owners, and I know Anna's a business owner, Gretchen, business owner, it is hard to get noticed without doing a lot of marketing and advertising. And even when you do that, as you know, there's a lot of noise. Social media is incredibly noisy, and the platforms are not very friendly to people that are trying to share their content and get noticed for a lot of reasons. They suppress your information if it's not popular. If you're not getting enough clicks, if you're not getting enough engagement, they just assume it's not enough quality. And so they won't show it to that many people. They also do it because they want you to pay for advertising. There are people who are very popular. I can think of one account in particular that has two to 3 million followers, huge. And they notice a decline in their engagement over time. And they shared their stats and they're like, what's going on? Come on. And this is on Instagram and Facebook. And it was like, quite clearly, you are pushing me into paying for advertising on your platform because you've been reducing my engagement, throttling my access to my audience, and things like that. So you have to do a lot to get noticed. And I talk about writing because it is a way for you to share your point of view, your philosophy on things, your expertise. A lot of you are experts at your professions, your domain experts, but do people know that? If the people work with you directly, hopefully they do, right? If you're trying to get noticed by people outside of the company you work for, outside of your inner circle, which you should be, how many people really know you? That's the big question. And so if you are writing and consistently publishing, about once a week, people will start to pay attention. They'll start to notice. And if there is a central theme to what you're talking about, then you are perceived as the expert on that and you will attract a following. And that is good because that is going to be good for your business. Obviously, if you're a business owner, it's going to be good for your career. If you are professionally trying to get attention, I know someone, it's kind of funny. I wish he was on the call. Um, he's been writing and consistently sharing his point of view in kind of long form post on LinkedIn. And oddly enough, an executive at his own company who wasn't even aware of his existence met him and said, oh, you're the guy I've been reading your content on LinkedIn. I love your content. So this is somebody at his own company, an executive, that didn't know who he was because he's several rungs down the ladder at work, but was following and appreciating his content on LinkedIn of all places. And that's a good thing. And so that can be good for his career within the company. It's going to be good for his career outside the company. Because what happens, and I've seen this with people who are consistent about this, they get approached by recruiters, they get approached by hiring managers, they get approached to do talks on panels and to talk at conferences, to do keynotes, much, much more than other people. Why would somebody reach out to someone who's never published anything, not a single word, not a single article, and say, hey, would you do a keynote at our conference? Would you speak on this panel about this topic as an expert? You've done nothing to represent yourself as an expert on that topic. So why would they? So it's incredibly powerful. Let's see. I talked about cross publishing with the community. And so it's important to do this too. Josh heard this message. I think, Anna, I've talked with you a lot about this. You don't have to take your content and publish it only in one place. It's good to have kind of your home base. Like, where do you want the center to be? Where do you publish first? And that could be Medium, it could be LinkedIn, it could be your own blog, it could be anywhere. I publish first on Substack, which is my newsletter. And so that's where most of the SEO love is going to go for you. But you should also be cross publishing because not all eyeballs are on the same platform. And again, not everybody sees your stuff. And I know this for a fact. People will share something or I'll share something and a fraction of your audience sees it. And so you have to really reshare things again and get that content out across multiple platforms. So you can have something you've written on Medium, and then you can publish it on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn native article, which they treat better than a link you share. You can put it on your own blog, and eventually you could wrap all that stuff together and put it into a book. So I've been taking a lot of the content I've written for the past 6 years, and I've been updating it, revising it, adding new material to create the book that I've been writing. And I'm about 20 chapters in now at this point. It's helped hold me accountable by telling myself I have to release a chapter of the book every month. It forces me, because I know people are waiting for it, to get the work done, to get the book written, which I've been trying to write. I've been trying to write a book for 20 plus years, and it always goes on the back burner. So this has forced me to get the book written. And writing a book, as I put in the newsletter today, is the ultimate new business card. It's the ultimate way to stand out. When you write a book, you are immediately positioned as an expert for, better or worse. Maybe you're not, but you've seen this. People are experts on something as soon as they publish a book. And you start to attract a following, and then you start to get noticed a lot more than people who have not written books. And this is all about becoming probably less than the top 1% of people who create and put stuff into the world, because it's not as hard as people think it is, but it is perceived to be hard, but it's also scary. I know people are scared to do this. You will attract people who love what you have to say. You'll attract people that hate what you have to say. You're going to attract haters and trolls. It's the nature of the internet, and you have to learn to kind of deal with it and just live with it and ignore it for the most part. It's a little scary to put yourself out there, and that's why very few people do it. Most people are consumers. Most people read, they watch Netflix, they listen to music. They do not produce videos. They do not write books. They do not make music, except for Josh. Josh actually makes music. He's a musician. So if you are a creator, you're already in the top probably 0.1% of the planet. You will get noticed. Your career will succeed as a result of being visible, being highly visible. Okay. I'd love to take some questions or have a conversation. I can also talk about LinkedIn profiles. We have plenty of time to dive into that. Anna, you wanted to talk about something, if I'm not mistaken, if you want to come off mute and exist in the Zoom.
Hi.
Hey, it's Anna.
It's been a
Look.
while.
Yeah, it's
So
been a
this
while.
is a different format from when I was last here so many months ago. So I hope I'm not like destroying the flow of things.
You're not at all. No.
So one of the things that I have been doing is something called like productivity coaching, or peak performance coaching, where I basically help founders and CEOs better understand their team and how to optimize them, either to prevent burnout or to like just get more productivity out of them, or even just create like better understanding of like how their team members show up and think, or um, motivate themselves, right?
Right.
And I have about 5 successful case studies. Um, so the product does work, and the transformation in the product is quite quick, which is really cool.
Mm.
What I want to do is take those successes and replicate it into different industries, or to basically find the right industry for me that would be most fruitful for my time and effort.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know I messaged you about maybe talking to construction owners
Mm-hmm.
who are having, because I was talking to some guy in New York, and he's like a more of a blue collar guy, and he made the suggestion where like upper management, they have so many tough personalities that they end up conflicting, to the
Yeah.
point where construction companies have to be specific or conscious as to like who can work on what, because
Yeah.
X personality doesn't work with X personality and this and that. And he said, like, if you could phrase it where I can help people who can't work together, that is a huge pain point for construction companies, and they would be very interested in that. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that's one angle, but I feel like maybe the construction companies would be too big of a giant, because the small ones are like 750 people, and 100 of those are like upper management. And I feel like that would be a lot of red tape in terms of dealing with HR and stuff like that. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I don't know like the best approach, because like the first 5 case studies that I got were more individual level. Like I think the biggest company I had worked with was a team of 15, and although he was saying that the construction crews or like the upper management crews work in teams of 15. um, it's still a big corporation, right? And dealing with
Right.
HR and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I'm trying to figure out like what would be a good industry that might be a better, like lower barrier to entry, that I could get some case studies and then build up to perhaps a construction company like level where it's 750 people. I'm in San Diego now, and I was talking to my Airbnb host actually, and he says that VCs would probably benefit from something like this. Like, if I go up and ask them, like, how do you vet people in the hiring process, or when you're about to work with a company, how do you vet them to know that they're good people or they're going to be reliable, other than perhaps your gut instinct? And
Right. Right.
Larry, I know you've worked with VCs in the past. Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
experience with like how they actually end up vetting their co-founders or even the team that works for them? Like, is there a real like structured, systematized vetting process that goes beyond, gut feeling?
Yeah. So people tend to choose co-founders that are people they know. It's very rare that they do the co-founder dating, although there are services that do that. So that is one interesting angle. I'll have to see if they still exist. So there were some platforms that have sprung up over the last 15 years or so that are really about matching co-founders. And there's a few I know that still exist. So we should talk after this. I'll see if I can share some links with you. So what they're trying to do is match people based on more than anything kind of skill set and background and what they think the startup needs. So if it's going to be an AI startup, they want somebody who has, machine learning experience, for example. If it's going to be a SaaS startup, they want somebody who's worked at a place like Oracle or whatever, Salesforce. So they do a little bit of that. What I don't think they're doing, which is even more important, is matching people who are going to be harmonious and be able to work together. Because just because you have the right skill set doesn't mean you're going to work together.
Yeah.
And we
So
often
that's, I
talk about
think,
that.
I think that's the unique proposition that I can offer.
Yeah.
Um, and like right now, I'm calling myself a productivity coach, but I've been talking to people about it like in person, and it's just not resonating. They don't really, it's still not, it doesn't really make sense. And then as I was sitting down with my Airbnb host just now, he was like, what you do seems like it's productivity coach does not encompass what it is that you actually do. Like that doesn't,
Right. Yeah.
it's
It's not what
not,
you're describing right now. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So, I mean, maybe like a people assessment consultant, or I don't know, like what would be like quote unquote sexy name for something like this where people right off the bat could understand what it is. And because like if I come in and say I'm a content marketer or I'm a programmer, everybody kind of just understands what that is.
Sure. Yeah.
And I thought maybe if I came in and said I'm a productivity coach, like people would understand what that is. But it seems like that's not quite hitting or resonating. So I'm trying to figure out
Right.
what would be a good. I mean, the name and the angle is not as
Yeah.
necessary. I'm sorry, the title is not as necessary. It would be helpful, but I think what would be most important for this conversation is like understanding what would be a good angle for me to target, so that I can just maybe like go deep dive on like these 3 months with this target industry and see where it goes. I'm wondering if I were to target like these VCs that say, hey, I do like interpersonal conflict or people assessments, like what kind of maybe pushback would I get from something like this, other than like, I don't know who you are. But
well, it's interesting because I think sometimes it's better to have more of a discovery, as you were just kind of describing, a discovery process to learn what they think, the way they talk about their problem. Because this is the problem that I think a lot of us run into. And this is applicable for business owners, but it's also applicable for people in their careers, right? It's like you're speaking about yourself in one way and you're giving yourself a specific job title, but the employer describes it a different way. And so they don't think there's a match, even if there is. And so what's interesting, and I tell people to do this all the time, even when they're crafting resumes and job applications and all that kind of stuff, is like, look at the language of the job description, look at the language of how they talk about it. And you could see that and go, well, what they really need is XYZ, but they're talking about ABC. It's like, well, you got to sell them ABC because that's what they think they need. Later, when you make the connection, you can show them, well, this is actually what you need. This is the process we should go through. But I think a really healthy activity would be to have some kind of discovery conversations with founders, with some VCs, partners, and things like that, to talk about these pain points around team. Because what I think you're describing is almost like team construction, hiring, and mapping talent into these organizations, because it's so critical. With a startup, it's much more critical than it is with a larger company. With a larger company, one bad employee out of 5,000, it's not going to take the company down. With a startup of 5 people, one bad founder, one bad employee will destroy the startup. Absolutely. And so I think it is these early stage startups and these incubators, the venture capital firms, the angel investors that are helping the team, one, figure out, is there a good chemistry and dynamic between the founders? Is the founding team healthy? So this is that company I'm talking with in Canada that does these assessments. What they're trying to do is something very similar, which is, here are these, off the shelf assessments you could apply to see if your team's healthy. Or do you have a team that's actually going to be full of conflict because of their personalities and the way they think and the way they work? So that's one thing, would be say, founder conflict destroys startups. Would you like a way to assess, is there going to be founder conflict? And how do we fix it? How do we address it? What's the process by which we can make these founders healthier and work together better? Then how do we carefully develop the team and add more talent? So how do you construct these teams? What are you looking for? What would be a good balance? Because the other problem I think sometimes startups have is they hire more of themselves. And that's not always the healthiest, most robust team. So 2 Stanford MBAs hire another Stanford MBA. And before you know, it's a whole bunch of Stanford MBAs. And that's not a balanced, heterogeneous company. It's going to be a company that fails in the long run because they're all too homogenous. So I think that too. So I think there's one guy I think I should introduce you to. His name's Marvin Liao. He was on my podcast last year. So he's been in the venture industry. He was at 500 startups. He's an angel investor. He's still doing a ton of this kind of stuff. Very nice guy, very approachable. He's been doing this stuff forever. He's got like a 20 plus year career. I think he'd be good to talk with, to say, I'm in this space of understanding founder chemistry, helping founder harmony, and helping them build out their teams by hiring the right talent. So basically their startup doesn't implode. Who should I talk to? How do they think about this? What is their biggest pain point? How would I position myself to be a solution for them? And I think he'd be totally open to this. And I think he could also introduce you to a ton of startups So
Oh, that would be
I think that would be
fabulous.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know I have proof. You know what I mean? Like it's not like
Hmm.
this is a theoretical product. I do have proof, which is good.
Yeah.
It's so I do feel confident in the ability to perform. And I do feel confident that like I can create team structure harmony or
Yeah.
drastically
Yeah.
reduce conflict because I have a case study that literally the two founders told me exactly that, right?
Okay. That's
Um,
good.
they came
Yeah.
together and they didn't know they knew of each other from years of like kind of being in the space, but they decided to build a company together, but they did it remotely. One's in California, the other one's in Florida, and so
Mm-hmm.
um, just by me working with them virtually, they were able to create like a $1.2 million company in the first year, right? Just by
That's
and
good.
one of the
Okay.
co-founders was like, "Hey, that would have been a much more stressful for me because I would have hired the wrong people,
Yeah.
and we wouldn't have been able to reach that within 3 months of starting the company without
That's
your
right.
help.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been
That's
able
good.
to do that."
That's good.
And I
Yeah.
have
I
that on
think,
video, you know.
okay. So I was going to say video testimonials are powerful.
Yeah. And he
Getting
even
their words written in their language, like how did they talk about the problem and the
mhm
solution? Because that will resonate with other business owners and founders that they're speaking the same language. Like, oh yeah, we feel that pain too.
mhm
So I think that would be good too.
yeah. Yeah. So I would love that intro with that guy and
Okay.
basically recap, what it is I could do and even yeah, introductions to startups would be fabulous too.
Okay.
Um
Okay.
and I'm wondering like should I just target like startup owners right away or would it be better to kind of do like more of that backdoor approach where I talk to the VCs right away? Or maybe I should talk to your friend first and then kind of make
I
the
would talk,
assessment.
yeah, because I think he would know the right way to work your way into the system. I'd
Mhm.
love coming in through the hub and spoke model, as you know, which is if you can come in through the VCs, the partners, the angel investors, because that's one person you connect with that now is connected to 150 startups, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And if they give you the seal of approval and they're like, this is our expert who helps you build healthy teams, they push you on all of their portfolio.
Mhm.
So their portfolio is kind of forced to work with you because they're like, hey, I don't want this to fail. This is my
Mhm.
investment portfolio. They're going to help you build the right team. It's going to make you more successful, which is going to make me rich. Yay. They're going
Mhm.
to be the ones that are pushing for it. And so you don't have to go and sell to 150 people. You sell to one person who then tells the founders, you're going to work with this person,
Mhm.
which I know that happens. They definitely hire people that coach founders on their presence. They're like their executive presence, public speaking. They did that with Mark Zuckerberg because they're like, dude, you've really got to fix this. If you're going to stay as the head of this company, you've got to get better at public speaking. And so they coached the heck out of him. Um, and that he didn't really have a choice when the board's like,
Mhm.
you're going to get better at this. Here's who you're going to work with.
Mhm.
It gets done.
Yeah, if I could become the go-to consultant on a certain amount of incubators, then, that'd
That's
be
right.
great.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
You
Yeah,
bet.
I look forward to that intro. Thank you.
Other questions or things you guys like to talk about? Either Gretchen or Josh, Nema, Megan, or I can just dive into the LinkedIn stuff. It's up to you guys. Do you have some questions or topics you'd like to discuss? Everybody's on mute and hidden. So I'm staring at my face.
I mean, if nobody else, you could look at my I'll just take advantage, Larry. Hi.
Oh, hi, Nema.
Um,
How you doing?
Hey, I want to ask, like you're talking about writing. So I used to
Yeah.
be a UX designer and I used to write when I was a UX designer, but I switched over to product management a couple years ago. I just don't feel like writing about product management because I know it's important to write, but I'm
Sure.
just like, what
Sure.
should I write about? If that's like, I'm just trying to
Well,
figure that
that's
out.
the cool thing is I think what you're touching on is exactly where sometimes people go wrong. I know I used to be a designer. I used to be a product management. Um, I'll talk about designers. I love designers. That's where I came up. Boy, do they like to talk about design. They like to talk about design process, and everything, design systems. You know who doesn't care? The people just want results. It's like there was an interesting thread on LinkedIn where people like somebody was a business owner. I said, I don't care what font you use. I just want success. You
Mm-hmm.
decide. You're the expert. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to read a 20-page article about it. That's for you guys. That's an industry kind of thing. And so I think it's similar where it's like, yeah, there are people who write about product management. Marty Kagan's one, and he's fantastic. I love
Yeah.
Marty. Um, I think talking more about the problems is what resonates with people. So it's more about talking about what problems did a company face or a business owner or whatever. What I find fascinating is more like, how does product management work really well with engineering or design? Are there stories? It's all about the stories. Like,
Okay.
are there stories where there was conflict between product and engineering, or between product and business, which there often is, or
Mm-hmm.
whoever? It's like, yeah, this happened. There was conflict. We couldn't agree. Here's how we came through it. Here's how we overcame that problem. And here's how we came out the other side with a better way of working together. So it's not necessarily about product management and product metrics and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. It's more about, what are the human issues that we all face?
Okay.
Conflict with coworkers, a business problem or a product problem or a customer problem that we had to figure out, what was the real problem. Customers were complaining about X, and we could have just done X, which a lot of companies do, but we thought about it. We did research, we dug into it, and we found out X really meant Y. And if we provided Y, that's way better than just solving X, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that whole thing. I mean, Steve Jobs talked about this. He's like, love customers. They are not creators,
Yeah.
right? And so they will tell you what they think they want, which is not the product. If it was, they would be the ones who are founding companies like Apple. So he said, listen to the problem, see the opportunity, and then you have to create the solution, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's so many stories that you could tell about that. But I also think there's all kinds of stories that people can tell about their own journey through their career. Because you just talked about being a career switcher
Yeah.
and how you made the transition into a different profession. And I bet there's a ton of lessons along the way. Like, what did I learn? What wasn't so good? What was good? Why did I do it? How do I feel about this on the other side? Is this for everyone? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Crumlish, if you know him. So he's in the community. He wrote a book, which he published with Rosenfeld Media. He was a designer and a design leader. He transitioned into product management and became a product leader. He wrote an entire book about, do you want to change careers essentially and become a product manager, go into product? Here's what that means. Here's what you need to know. Here's what that process is like. Here are people who've done it and sharing their story, and why they did it. So there's so many stories, and it is about the stories. That's the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that people really like, right? The other thing I would say is like, well, what do you want from it? So this is why I tell people to write. It's like, there's different reasons to write. Sometimes, like I was mentioning, it's cathartic. It's just like, I just want to get this off my chest. I want to tell this story. It just feels good to release it and get it out into the world and get it off my chest. I think a lot of times people write to help other people. And so they say, okay, I can educate somebody, I can help somebody. Uh, the other thing I think is like, well, there's something that the author wants to. And I think that's the important thing to think about is, sometimes it's money. People are writing because they're like, hey, I really want to publish a New York Times bestseller and I want to be, make $1 million from my book. And wouldn't that be fantastic? Which is extremely rare, as we all know. I mean, making money from writing is not a sure thing by any means. But I think there is something on the other side of that writing that you want. And I think that's the important question to say is like, what is it that you would love professionally? Are you trying to get promoted to the next level? Are you trying to reposition yourself into a different industry? Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Like when I did it for UX, I wanted to just become like a thought leader in UX so I could obviously get people to contact me. It'll be easier to find jobs. But right
There you
now,
go.
like I
Yeah.
did get laid off a while ago, but I'm thinking like, do I even want a career anymore? Like do
Sure.
what
Yeah. Yeah.
do I want to do something for myself, like go into business for
Sure.
myself? Like that's
Yeah.
what I'm like trying to figure my own thing out. So I'm not sure what.
So I saw you were doing that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting exercise that I tell my clients is would really help them kind of think about what to do next, is to think about, well, what is down the road 10, 15, 20 years? Where do you ideally, if you could just wave a magic wand and you were there, what would it be? What would you ideally want to be and ideally want to be doing? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean everything. Like, where are you living? How do you spend your days? What's Monday through Friday look like? Do you want to be in meetings all day like I used to be? You know, if I could wave a wand, it's like, no more meetings, no more spreadsheets. I don't want to do this stuff anymore. So thinking about that and then kind of doing a reverse planning exercise, which is incredibly effective, and saying, well, if that's where I want to be in 15 years or 10 years or whatever you think the timeline is, what did I have to do to get there? Step by step. So you step backwards to year 9, to year 8, to year 7. And then you start to get back to this point and you say, okay, well, if that's the next step to get on this path to where I really, really want to be, what's the gap? What is the gap? Is there a gap? Why is there a gap? Is it education? Is it experience? Is it positioning? Is it connections? What is it? And then the things that you're going to do are going to close the gap. So it's like, well, if it is positioning myself as an expert in this new domain, then I'm going to start writing about this domain. I'm going to research it. I'm going to get on panels to talk about it. I'm going to get on podcasts to talk about it. I want to be viewed as the person who knows this, who's really good at this, because that's the gap I see. That's the only thing keeping me from that next step that I want to take on the path. Or it could be, I want to get introduced to somebody. I want to network.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, how do I get closer to these people? And that's going to be a series of steps, right? I'm going to get close to this person. And then that person gets me to this person. And people do that all the time. They kind of work the chain. So I think that's an important thing to think about, is like, ideally, where would you like to be in 10, 15?
No, I have thought about that before, because that's why I never cared too much to go into management, because I always wanted to do, well, this is like years ago. I was like, I want to be remote. That was like, when I'm old, I'm like, remote work.
Even before all this, right?
Yeah, before remote came into like play, I was like, I just want something remote. And I was like, managers, how can manager be remote? Because the people are
out. I remember I faced the same problem. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the one thing I do like is, like, I do like teaching. Like,
okay,
I wouldn't mind building an online course, but that's where I get stuck. I'm like, what would I teach? I have to like pull that out of my head somehow. What would I teach people?
Sure. Yeah. I think that the funny thing is, everybody is more of an expert at something than they think they are, because for you, it's oxygen. This is the problem I think we get into, and there's a word for it, I can't remember right now, but it basically means that you know something so well that you don't even think about it anymore. For you, it's just like, doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody understand that? It does help to talk with people who are closer to you. So it's friends, you know, it's colleagues that have known you for a long time that you trust, family members or whoever, to have a conversation and say, what have I always been good at? What have you noticed about me? Where do you think my interests are? And family members are great at this. You know, parents, siblings will tell you that you've always had a passion for this. You know, like, really? Or you've always been good at this. Sometimes friends will do this, and colleagues, like, wow, you're really good at doing this. And I'm like, what do you mean? Everybody does that. And they're like, no, they don't. I have this conversation with people all the time as a coach, because people will go through this exercise, and I'll say, I want you to document, going as far back as you can, you know, memory or talking with parents. What are your talents that you've always had? Those are just natural, innate talents that you've had. What experience have you gained? What knowledge have you gained? What skills have you acquired? What have you become really good at? And make huge list of all these things. And then we talk about it, and I look at it, and they're like, oh yeah, but everybody can do that. And everybody can do this. And it's like, no, they can't. That's not true. That's actually pretty rare. I know most people can't do that. That's something you could actually talk about. It's something you could teach people. A lot of times the journey that you've taken is a course. So there's one guy that's in the community. He's not here right now, but he made a huge pivot from a non-tech industry into tech and became a designer. And I was with him for the journey, so I know how hard he worked to do that. I know how important it was. He's so focused right now on just kind of moving up that ladder as a designer that he hasn't even noticed how much he's changed from where he was before. And I said, there are a ton of people trying to break into tech, and there's a ton of people trying to break into design. Lots of design boot camps, lots of design schools. He knows where they dropped the ball and where things are missing. He's like, yeah, they didn't really teach me how to get a job. They didn't teach me how to network with people. They taught me the skills. I learned how to use Figma. Okay. that helped me. I learned how to do layout. I learned all this stuff and design
Yeah.
principles, but they didn't teach me the hardest thing, which was, okay, now I got to get a job. And so I said, you've done it. That journey is a lesson, and it's a course where you could go back and step by step by step say, here's what I did. Here are the mistakes I made. Here are things I wish I'd known. And now you can share that with someone. And that's a course. That's a workshop.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny. I was telling people on the call last week, there's somebody who's making a tremendous amount of money teaching a course, the Chicago manual of style. And they said, I don't know why. They can buy the book. There's the huge book. It teaches you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
But people say, I would rather have a course with you on video and pay 200 and some bucks for this course to have you kind of walk me through it and talk about it, because people learn differently. And she said, all I'm doing is teaching people what this book is and how to use it and how to apply it. And yet she's making a ton of money from this course, which is crazy. And it's just like, why don't they just buy the book?
Yeah.
It happens all the time. People talk about this all the time. They're like, could you look it up online? Everything's online. Could you look this stuff up? Could you learn it yourself? Yes, you could. But some people need the interaction with another human being to learn.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing they need is the accountability. So they will never make the time to do it for themselves. They keep telling themselves they will.
Yeah.
They won't. So if they pay you and they're going to see you every week on a call, I just went through this, and it was a bunch of stuff about developing and marketing my newsletter. And I was in a course with 10 other people live. We met every week for 8 weeks. And it was that commitment and that accountability of being on camera with him and talking about it, and him reviewing stuff and saying, did you make that change? Did you update things? Did you change your landing page language? That forced me to do it. It's not like I didn't know I should do all this stuff. I just kept putting it off. And the course made me accountable, and it made me do it. So there's probably something that you know really well that you just take for granted.
Okay.
And other people could use that, and they could use you holding them accountable, saying, let's take you step by step through this. Right.
Yeah, I'll think about it.
Absolutely. Other questions or topics? Anybody else want to come off mute and be bold and brave? It's not scary. Josh has been talking to me for years. He's not scared.
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
I'd start video, but I have a bad connection right now. But
oh, no worries.
So I've come upon a situation. I changed careers about 7 months ago, going from a for-profit family-run company, manufacturing company in supply chain, doing purchasing for almost 15 years, and got burnt out, decided to change careers, change whole industries, everything, and went to came upon a position with a nonprofit that I've volunteered with for quite a few years prior, and jumped at it. Took a bit of a pay cut, but I was okay with it. Not a problem with that. Problem that I've kind of come into is that since taking the job, and you can only ask so many questions, just try and get as much of a feel of the company during an interview and talking to people outside. I've come to learn that my boss I was basically hired to be her replacement, and which she's not planning to retire for another 5 or so years, but she's the only one in that position. She's held that position for 30 some years.
Wow.
And hiring me was not her choice. It was kind of pushed on her by the board to hire her replacement, essentially.
Oh my. Wow.
And I'm okay learning things, but she's very, she doesn't want to give me things to do. And I'm trying to, manage my manager a little bit in a way to
Yep.
show my worth, and you're paying me this money, you guys came up in what you wanted to pay for this position, and I came down a little bit. But I'm not quite sure how to get through this. I like the position. I want
Yeah.
want to eventually have her position, but I don't know all the things that I need to know, and
Yeah.
she doesn't want to teach them to me.
Yes. Yes. That's a tough situation to be in. That's unfortunate they put you in that situation.
Right.
It does happen. It does happen where, oh goodness, a lot of people, a similar thing will happen where a lot of people are hired to fill a seat that somebody internally wanted. And they were jockeying for it, and they kind of threw their hat in the ring, and people are like, nope, you're not ready for this, like a leadership role. And they hired somebody from the outside, and they come in, and lo and behold, there's somebody in the company that's really unhappy. They're there.
Right.
So it's really challenging. I was in that situation once. And I could tell I was picking up on the hostility. I was like, what is going on here? There's some kind of hostility coming from this person, very defensive, didn't want to share information. Um, like they saw me as a threat or something, and I didn't really understand. So
Yeah. And I'm lucky in that I haven't gotten any hostility from her. It's almost
that's
like
good.
an unconscious thing that, I don't want to give you work because then it's taking away from what I'm doing, kind of thing. But like, she's very pleasant to work with, very nice woman, but
yes, yeah,
not quite sure how to navigate this and how to
it
go
does
forward.
take
And I've been there for 7 months. So
okay.
I don't know, how long do I leave it for?
Yeah. I mean, it is true. Any job, I tell people, I said, be prepared for the first 6 months to just feel like you're drowning. Almost every job, this first 6 months, you're not really up to speed and you're not productive. And it does feel like a daily struggle, like you'll never master it. And I felt that way in every new job for 6 months. And then there's something kind of tips and you're like, okay, I think I'm starting to get this. And I'm starting to get this environment. I'm getting the people. So it does take a while to build the trust and the relationships. I would say in this case, it's going to take some time with her. There's going to be a certain amount of stuff that you can kind of pick up through osmosis and observation, which is, it's kind of a shadowing exercise where you want to be with them and kind of assisting and observing and learning. And I know I did this in a role where I was like, I really want to learn this GM role. And it's not like they have the time in their job because they're so busy to sit down and just teach me how to be a GM every day. They didn't have time for that. And I knew that. And so I told this person, I said, do you mind if I just get invited to the meetings you go to? And I'm just going to sit there like a fly on the wall. I just want to shadow. I'm not going to, I know you're busy, crazy busy. We all are. I'm not going to be a disruptor in the meeting because I'm not prepared and I'm not ready for it. Right. These are meetings with these senior executives and it's a very touchy political situation. And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to open my mouth. I'm not going to do anything.
Right.
I'm just going to learn. I'm just going to observe. And so part of that can be through a little bit of osmosis and kind of shadowing and partnering with them and not really being a threat, not being disruptive, but just observing and learning and absorbing everything you can like a sponge as much as you possibly can. Part of that's going to be building trust in this case, unfortunately. Because you were put in a situation that was very disruptive where they were like, oh, I see. I see what's happening here. So it's going to be a lot of trust building. And as you know, some people take a while to warm up. I can think of some people that took like a year or more before we kind of bonded and they saw, hey, I'm not here to do damage and I'm here to make this work for both of us. And you will start to see opportunities that come up where it's like, they seem overloaded or they seem like they're taking on too much or they seem like they're really stressed and they have a lot of anxiety. And to be able to gently offer and say, I can help, right? I'm here to help. I'm here to be your partner. What can I do to make things better for you? And I tell people to do this with their bosses all the time. And most people don't. Most employees do not do this because they see the relationship is very one directional. Like you're the supervisor, you're the boss, you tell me what to do. And they're not a human being. They're just some brutal supervisor, right? And I said, one of the most valuable things you can do to position yourself is to go into a meeting once you've kind of got your own job under control. You certainly can't do this when you're not able to control your own job and get your work done. But once you've built that relationship and rapport to be able to say, what can I do to help you? What can I take off your plate? And I remember doing this with a boss where it's like they seemed stressed, and I said, "What's going on this week? What do you got on your plate?" And they were talking about it, and I said, "I could maybe go to that meeting for you. You want me to go and take notes, and I'll just take care of it?" And they said, "Really? You do that?" And I'm like, "Totally. I know you're overloaded. They're like, I'm booked in 3 different meetings in the same time." And it's like, I could go to one of those meetings and just be your proxy, right? So being that person that they feel like they can trust, that you actually do have their best interest at heart, you're like, hey, I want to help, because it's good for you too, obviously, especially in this case, where it's like, as you are taking on more, her life's going to get easier. It's going to get less stressful. You're going to learn more. You're going to start being seen as the person who's doing these things, and taking care of these tasks. And the transition of power, the transition of the role is going to be seamless. It's going to feel pretty smooth versus abrupt, which sometimes happens. So I would expect,
and that's what the board wanted to skip, was an abrupt
absolutely
transition once she decides to retire.
It's pretty healthy. I wish they would have worked with her a little bit better about it. It's like,
right. I mean, at least she was involved in the interviewing process, so she knew
that's good.
Who was coming in. She had a say in that. So at least I'm her chosen one, I guess.
That's
I can
fantastic.
Look at it that way. But
see, that's good. That's good. So she's probably feeling pretty sensitive about it. Maybe one of her concerns is, if this person gets up to speed too quickly, I'm out sooner than I want to be. Right.
True.
And so she's probably, and I've seen this, where people are kind of holding on to the information and power as long as they possibly can, because they know, if I'm no longer necessary, I'm out.
Yeah.
And she may not feel ready.
And I have had somebody that I had worked with previously in the volunteering side of things say, yeah, I just in talking to her, she was pretty surprised that you caught on to this one project that we were working. She was pretty surprised you caught on to that so quickly. And I was like, oh, okay, that was pretty easy, but
see.
So yeah, that may be some of it too.
that's probably some of it. Yeah. It sounds like it's not disastrous and it's not hostile, which is fantastic.
No, it isn't. It's just one of those things after jumping ship from 15 years in a career. It's kind of scary to come across. What did I get myself into?
Sure. Well, I think as long as you keep her very close and build a really good relationship, then she's going to become more and more glad that things are going to be in your hands. It gets to be a point of feeling comforting. And I've been in those situations where I knew I was going to leave and I had to transition ownership of a team to somebody else. And it's nerve-wracking if you care. And so when you get to the point that you feel like that person is up to speed and the team's going to be in good hands, it's comforting, and you start to feel more relaxed. And the day comes where you're like, hey, I'm happy for you to take full control. It's like, they're going to be okay. You're doing great. I think they're in good hands. And now I feel like I can move on to something else, right. So it's going to be relationship building, but yeah, keep her really close and just be that person that's there to help, make her life easier. And over time, that's going to mean more and more stuff goes to you, which is the way it should be.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
You bet. Hey, look, it's Ashim. How you doing, man?
How's it going, Larry?
Long time no see.
Yeah. I sorry I'm late. I signed up and then got pulled into other things, but
no worries. So
you got yourself out of the snow?
Yeah, finally. Yeah, we finally have spring weather just even in the last couple of days. Like, we've had heat on for a long time. Like, where's our spring? But now I think we finally have it. Yeah.
Nice.
Sheem and I worked together at Yahoo many years ago. Yeah.
I thought I'd just come on and touch base. I didn't have any particular question, but I am once and again sort of in between the sort of.
Oh, okay. Looking for your next thing. Okay. What are you looking for?
These days it's more, I think I really want to focus on leadership roles only this time.
Okay.
Just because, to doing product for this many years, it's just,
not,
I think it's either like that, or it's either, something early stage where, I could kind of just try the whole product ship. But it's all balance of home and
Yes,
life balance, figuring that out
absolutely.
also. But yeah, I'm just kind of still in that early phase. Just sort of
Okay.
this April was my last early April was my last run, my last job, and so it's kind of regaining focus, kind of what you
Got
were
it.
talking about just now, just a little bit of just getting the mental. I don't,
Yes.
I'm more, I'm not looking at 1 year, but I'm looking at, trying to figure something out soon. So just
Okay.
but
Okay.
I know it's not very realistic with anything's possible in this environment. I guess that's what.
Yeah, the economy's crazy, huh? It's definitely been more challenging, I would say, this year after just the massive number of layoffs in tech. So it's like the market's more competitive than it has been in the past 3 years, where it was like an employees market. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely flipped. But that doesn't mean there aren't things out there. There definitely are. So are you looking product leadership or business leadership? What are you
I
thinking?
mean, product leadership, it could be
Okay.
more wide, it could be wider, and then product. I mean, I've done product for so long.
I
Uh,
know. Yeah.
so I saw, so one of my friends was telling me, why don't I come into business development and do some of
Mm,
that? And there's a lot of roles, opportunities opening up. And then my core is, happens to be AI. So,
oh,
which
well, that's good.
yeah, which is like suddenly now become popular. And when I, got my degrees and all that, it was people laughed at me about
Oh, the machine learning and stuff.
why would
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like emphasize that? So it's just funny a little bit about that. So I'll probably look for something like that. I think
Okay.
what
Okay.
I'm learning is more. Um, I think it's if you don't follow your passion,
Yeah.
then you're just not going to be happy for the long run.
Right.
At some
Right.
point,
Yeah.
you'll kind of lose your focus and just not, you know if you find reasons not to want to be there,
Yeah.
uh
Exactly.
more,
Exactly.
more than wanting
Yeah.
to be there. So I think that's very important, even if it takes a little bit more time.
It's right. That's right. Yeah. That's exactly the challenge. I would say finding a job, just any old job, isn't. I shouldn't say easy, but it's easier. It's definitely easier. Finding something where it's like I'm actually interested in this domain, or I'm actually interested in this company, it's harder, and it does take a little bit more time. But at least you land someplace that's intentional, and you're like, I could get excited about doing this work. I could get excited about going to work every Monday morning.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely good. You have a tremendously powerful network, obviously, from what you've done and being at Yahoo. So I'd say in the early days, I always tell people take a month or two and do nothing but just refresh your network. And it seems like, oh, I'm just having chats and coffee and lunch and oh, it's social. And
Mhm.
as you know, in this industry, social is business and social is career. And it is. And it's like intentionally reconnecting with people like Bill Michaels and Vish and all these people, right? That we know so well, and just saying, "Hey, how you been? What have you been up to? I'd love to catch up." And they're going to say, "What are you up to?" And then you're going to say, funny thing, I'm actually looking around for my next thing." And they're like, "What are you looking for?" That's exactly what they're going to say. You're like, "Well, I'm kind of interested in artificial intelligence. That's my background. It's hot right now. So I'm looking for a product leadership role with a company that's growing, that's in the artificial intelligence space." And they're going to say, "Okay, good, duly noted." And they're going to remember that. Or going to say, "I know somebody you should talk to." And so
Yep.
that's exactly how all these things go. So I'd say it'd be a fantastic investment just to, I tell people, download all your connections from LinkedIn into just a CSV file, put it into a spreadsheet, treat it like a customer relationship management, a CRM system, and go through and say, whoa, I'd love to talk to this person. Oh, I forgot about that person. They're fantastic, and just make a note and say, I'm going to schedule this and work your way through it. And say, every week I'm going to talk with like 5 people, right?
Yeah.
Some will be quick calls, like, we'll do a Zoom. Some of you be like, I'd love to have coffee with that person or go out to lunch with that person, whatever. Now that we can go back out in the world again. Um, but I would do that. That'd be, as you know, the fastest path back into a good opportunity. It's through the network. It's always through the network.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right. I started a little bit of that, and then
Oh, good. Okay.
been doing, juggling some home stuff, and I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to Europe for a couple of weeks,
Oh,
starting
nice.
starting
That's cool.
Monday.
There you
Yeah,
go.
just like, it's been through the grinder, working startups at 10, 12 hours a day. It's just
Yes.
you need
Yeah.
a detox from all that.
Yeah. That was me when I left Yahoo. It was supposed to be just a couple week vacation that turned into a 3-month vacation that turned into I never went back to a job. It's like, and all of a sudden, 13 years later, it's like, oh, I haven't had a job in 13 years. So
I thought you did pick up something in the Bay Area, did for a little bit, some contract work or something.
I did consulting, yeah, but I never went back to a 9 to 5. I never went back to a corporate gig. So I did consulting. I had my own startup for a while, and then I've been consulting ever since, doing the leadership coaching. For over 6 years now. So it's like, yeah, I love it. I mean, talking with people like yourselves, this is fun.
Yeah,
it's always good.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool, man. Now that I know, I'll keep my eyes open.
Yeah,
definitely.
Awesome. It's great to meet you all. I know you probably come from different walks of life. But,
lots of tech people. Any other final questions before we wrap up, folks? Anybody else have something want to talk about? Going once, going twice. All right, cool. Well, it's great having everybody here, seeing some new faces. Feel free to follow up later if you have any questions, and you can always attend another one of these. I do them every month now because it's a great way to get to meet people and take questions and share all the information that we all can share to help each other, because a lot of us are in the same boat. A lot of us are looking for a career change. A lot of us are in tech. Everybody's trying to do something that they love and be successful doing it. That's really what it's about. All right, guys. Have a good night. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.